Alrighty, it's time for the Western Conference version of the prediction. I did the Eastern Conference back on Tuesday, and now I am going to do the Western Conference. And the time that I'm recording this is on a Thursday, but by the time this video will be uploaded, it would be on a Friday because I am actually uploading this video a little bit later than I anticipated with, and I kind of explain why exactly I'm uploading it a little bit later than anticipated back in my CCL review that is actually now uploading. But either way, let's get into the Western Conference and predicting how the Western Conference will look at the end of the regular season. And like what I said about the Eastern Conference, what I'm going to do is on the right side, that is the teams that's going to miss the playoffs, which is why the numbers are red. And on the left side are the teams that's going to make the playoffs. And as I also mentioned in the Eastern Conference version, if I did not include your team in the left side, or if you see your team finding yourself here on the right side, which is you're not going to make the playoffs, try not to be offended by this. This is just my opinion, and if you have your opinion or you disagree with my opinion, then let me know in the comments below and kind of tell me why do you think that this X of a team that you said that it's going to miss the playoffs will make the playoffs. So yeah, without further ado, let us begin, and we start off with the team that's going to finish at the bottom. And unfortunately, the team that's going to finish the bottom, and a lot of people pick this. I hear a lot of media that predicted who exactly is going to finish in the Western Conference is this team, and that is my Quakes team. So I don't know if people should be surprised or should be kind of disappointed the fact that a lot of people aim that they're going to finish dead last again. And I said this before in the offseason. Despite the fact that we got Matheus Almeida, which I thought that was a huge signing for us, but we didn't really do much in the offseason to address some big issue that we had with this team, and we pretty much keep 90% of the same team that won 4 games. And I said that unless I start seeing this team perform, and unless I see Matheus Almeida somehow with his tactical genius, with his man marking kind of style of play, will be able to get this team to compete in the playoffs and start to win games, then I will believe that this team could actually not finish at the bottom of the table. But when I look at this team, I can't tell you that, I can't honestly say that this is a team that could be competing in the playoffs, especially the fact that the Western Conference is much stronger this year. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this in the Eastern Conference prediction video, but it seemed like the pendulum is now swinging back to the Western Conference, and it feels like the Western Conference right now is the much stronger conference than it is in the Eastern Conference. It's been the Eastern Conference that's been the stronger conference for the last couple of years, but because of so many guys that pretty much are so many big stars that are in Eastern Conference team that have left this year in the offseason, and how Western Conference team are, most of the bad teams are stacking up to trying to compete. Yeah, the West is going to be really, really tough. And it also doesn't help the fact that the Quakes have the second hardest schedule of all the team in MLS. So, yeah, unless I see this team start winning, and unless if they can beat these tough teams, I don't think they're going to come anywhere close to the playoffs. And I feel like the only way we're going to make the playoffs is that we need more signing, and also hopefully Almeida will work his magic that he did with Chivas with this team. And in 11th place, and this might be a little bit of a surprise to some, but I'm actually putting the Dynamo very low in the table. Now, I know the Dynamo won their CCL match and they're moving on into the quarterfinal against Tigres, but let's face it, that round of 16 match, it was a very ugly win, and really just an ugly way to get through into the quarterfinal, which I'm assuming they're probably going to get absolutely squashed by Tigres. And, for the Dynamo, obviously, the biggest issue with this team has to be the back line, which not only the back line is old, but it is very, very thin. And overall, I think the depth of this team, there's just really not that much depth in this team. And once those big guys that they have in the teams start to go down with injuries, then that can be a big problem. And we saw that happen last season when, besides the fact that they were blowing a million leads every single game, they had a lot of injury problem, and they have a lot of guys that were finding themselves in the IR. One of the most notable guy that find himself in the IR, and then once he came back, the Dynamo looked very good, was Juan David Cabeza, who, he is pretty much the Diego Chara version for the Dynamo. I mean, he is a guy that just rock solid in that defensive mid position, and he is a guy that's going to protect the back line that, like I said, I have question about this back line. I don't know if it's actually going to be good enough, and he needs to be good again, and he needs to be that kind of Diego Chara type of guy that's going to protect this back line, or else this Dynamo team is going to give up a ton of goals this season. And the other thing is, you don't know if Elise or Kyoto or some of these young Houston player is going to leave for Europe. I think Elise is probably the one that there's a lot of question whether or not if he's going to leave or not. This offseason there was rumor that he was going to leave, and then Elise says, well, I'm just going to wait maybe until summer and see maybe there's an offer there. So, yeah, we'll see if they will still have Elise for this full season, because if they lose them in the summer, that's a huge loss for the Dynamo. And then in 10th place, I'm going to say the Whitecaps. I'm just going to put their name here. It's a bit of a long one. But yeah, I'm going to say the Whitecaps are in 10th place. And really, to be honest, I can put Vancouver kind of anywhere on this board. I can put them in first. I can put them in third. I can even put them in last. And the reason why I can put them anywhere is that I don't honestly know where exactly this team is going to finish. Like, this team it feels like an expansion team. Like, FC Cincinnati obviously are the expansion team coming into the league this season. But it feels like the Whitecaps are like that second expansion team. They have they pretty much just completely overhauled the squad this off-season and brought in some new guys and brought in guys that Marc Dos Santos wants in his squad and basically build it from there. And yeah, I don't know how it's gonna work out. Now, to be fair, they still have some players from last season. Jordi Reyna, of course, is still there with the team, but they did lose a lot of big pieces. They lost Kai Kamara, of course, and Kendall Waston, for example. And I generally don't know how these new pieces that they bought is going to do well. I mean, if they do well, then this team could really compete in the Western Conference. But if they don't suit and fit in this season, they can end up to not miss the playoffs. So, yeah, it is very unpredictable of where the Whitecaps is. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to put them on the board, and I might as well just put them on the board where I predict them last season, which is right around this range. And, if you're a Whitecaps fan, you're upset about the fact that I put you this low on the table. Well, yeah, I understand, but since you're so unpredictable, I don't know where exactly. I don't want to put you at the top of the table, because at the end of the year, I'm just going to look very silly, the fact that I put them near the top and they finish near the bottom. But then again, at the end of the year, if the Whitecaps actually make the playoffs and they were one of the best teams in the Western Conference, that's going to make me a little bit silly, the fact that I predicted them in 10th place. In 9th place, and I also hate to put this team here. I generally want to put this team on the left side, but, I just think with the Rapids, with the way that they have just got so many MLS veteran players throughout this offseason, guys like Fel Hauber, Kai Kamara, Diego Rubio, Keegan Rosenberry, Nicholas Mesquita, they definitely have a lot of talented MLS kind of veteran player. However, this kind of movement seems very similar to what Orlando City did last year, and look what happened to Orlando City. They completely collapsed. Now, I'm not saying that can happen to the Rapids, but one thing that I am a little concerned is that if those guys went down for the Rapids, yeah, they're pretty much back to square one. Like, they don't have any depth on this team. They're pretty much, all these guys are just going to be in the first team, and once they go down, you're just putting the same team that finished near the bottom last season. And I think the other issue with the Rapids is probably, surprisingly, in the defensive area. I said Keegan Rosenberry was going to be a good center back kind of replacement. Yeah, I forgot he's not a center back. He's actually a fullback. So, you know, they still do have Courtney Ford, who is a very kind of young, talented kind of center back. But, you know, who exactly is he going to be partner with? And also, Tim Howard, you know, this is his retirement tour this year. Can he have one more good year, and can he really just turn back the time and just kind of defeat Father Clock time one last year before he, of course, hang up his boots? So, yeah. Next up, in 8th place, and originally I had this team as low as 11th, if you cannot believe it, but after some careful thinking, I think I'm going to put this team a little bit higher and kind of like right near the bubble, and that, of course, is FC Dallas. And, you know, I said that in the offseason, Dallas is going through a transitional phase. They're kind of rebuilding their core that they pretty much got rid of, and also they're bringing in a new manager after Oscar Pereira, of course, left for Tijuana, and they brought in a guy that knows this team very well, at least in the youth level. That is Luchi Gonzalez, and he, of course, brought bunch of guys that he coached when he was with the youth team. And, you know, for Dallas, I think, you know, the question is, will these youth players actually kind of develop? And, you know, now that I look at the Dallas squad, I think the most thing that they miss for the core that they got rid of are kind of like on the attacking core. So guys like Maxi Urruti, Mauro Diaz, Teshan Akindele, all those guys, they were on the attacking core, but their defensive core is still there. I mean, Matt Hedges, he's still there. I mean, he's still there to basically do a very good job in terms of being there in the defensive end, and considered to be one of the best and most underrated center back in the league. And I think for Dallas, the problem for them is not going to be in the defensive end, but the problem for them this year is going to be goal scoring, because with Urruti gone, you know, who exactly is going to score those goals? Now, they do have Domenico Baggi, but is Baggi going to be like that guy that he was when he was with the Rapids, where he's going to score some goal? I mean, Baggi, he's a decent kind of center forward, but he's not like a 15 goal scorer kind of center forward. And I think Dallas goal scoring is going to be a huge issue, and maybe Dallas could do something similar to Columbus did last year, where Columbus, you know, they didn't really have a goal scorer. Well, they did. They had a goal scorer named Jerzy Zardes, but that was the only guy that was scoring the goals. So maybe they have somebody on their team that can be a goal scorer, or maybe they can do what they did last year, where it just feels like they just do not need a goal scorer and everybody will just contribute at one time. But the dangerous about doing that is eventually, if you're going to use the formula of everybody contribute in terms of the goal scoring department, and then once those guys that contribute in the goal scoring department, but they kind of cool off, and that all of a sudden you see nobody can score goals for you anymore. Yeah, that's the dangerous about Dallas, and that is why we saw in the second half they kind of were on a bit of a downhill slide, and kind of reminds you of what happened 2 years ago when they went on that big downward slide. And Dallas, I'm sorry that I have to mention that, and especially if you're a Dallas fan watching this, I do apologize that I have to keep mentioning what happened in 2017. I mean, it's just that was just something that we probably will never see in MLS, at least for a while. But in 7th place, I'm going to say Minnesota. And, you know, I was going to put Minnesota and Colorado both in the playoffs, which would just sound insane because, you know, they were two of the worst team in the league. And despite the fact that they did a lot in the offseason, how can they both be in the playoffs at the same time? But, you know, I think Minnesota, in my opinion, they're more ready to potentially make the next step and heading into the playoffs. And this is also year 3 of their 3-year plan, or at least their GM Manny Lago says that this is year 3 of the 3-year plan, and we basically bought all the pieces that we need to try to fix that defense, and now all we have to do is get the resort. And certainly I think for Minnesota, they really need to get the resort this year. They really need to challenge for the playoffs because, you know, all the pieces are there. You know, the defense has been awful for the last couple of years, but in the offseason, they addressed that by getting Gregorius, Opara, and also Ozzy Alonso to basically try to stabilize that defense, and knowing the fact that they also have a very good attack up front for them. You know, I think this is really the year that Minnesota will break through, and Minnesota is going to be no longer the laughing stock of MLS. And it's the same thing I would say about the Rapids. I think the Rapids for the last couple of years, they've kind of been the laughing stock of MLS. It's like every time you visit them, you know you're going to get easy 3 points, even if you're playing them at home or away. Yeah, this year, it's not going to be the case, you know. When you play the Rapids or Minnesota, it's going to be definitely tougher than you would be facing in the previous year because these teams have improved in the offseason and they are being ambitious of actually making the playoffs. But yeah, next up, in 6th place, I'm going to say RSL. And, you know, for RSL, they have a very interesting squad. They have a squad that is mixed with some very talented youth player, a couple of good MLS experience player, and a couple of guys that are kind of a bit mediocre. And, you know, what's interesting about RSL this season is that can they actually win on the road? Because last season, they cannot win on the road for whatever reason, except when they went to the playoffs and able to pull off a miraculous win against LAFC. They have been really poor on the road. And it will be also interesting to see what will Mike Pecky do and whether or not is he going to find the right starting 11 and the right formation, because it seemed like he tinkered a lot last season, and I expect he probably will tinker again and probably kind of like switch the different role between who exactly is going to be starting in that number 9 position. I mean, I know probably he will put Sam Johnson as his number 9 because they signed him as a DP signing, but if Sam Johnson started to not look good, then do you rely on Corey Bear again, which is not a bad idea. I mean, Corey Bear did very well last year, but, you know, as I said before, even though he did good last year, he's not going to be the guy that's going to give you 15 goals and going to be your goal scorer that you rely on as you would with your striker. So, you know, that striker position is still kind of interesting, but overall, Mike Pecky, I have a feeling he's going to tinker a lot and move a lot of guys in different position, which could be good at times because then the opponent don't know where exactly you're going to play and how you set up, but at the same time, it could be bad because if you keep switching tactics and keep switching kind of tinkering with the team, you're just making the teams very unstable, and the team just does not adapt to one way that they want to play. And yeah, so RSL, I predict they're going to finish 6th place, and in 5th place, I'm going to say the Galaxy. And I was tempting to put the Galaxy out of the playoffs after they announced that Ola Kamara, of course, have left to go to China, which, you know, I am absolutely stunned that was the case. But I think some Galaxy fans are happy that he left because they got a whole tons of money out of that deal. And when they got him for, I believe, 600K TAM or 400K TAM, and also Jarzy Zardes to give them to Columbus, this doesn't sound like a bad deal. Able to basically sell it to another club and earn a profit out of that. However, they will lose a 15 goal scored, and they're gonna really heavily rely on Zlatan and maybe even Alessandrini to basically deliver the goals for them. And I know Zlatan has been once again being egoistic and saying that he's gonna break all the records, but can he really score like 30 goals and just repeat what Joseph Martinez did last year? And also, what are they going to do with the Dos Santos situation? They have tomorrow to basically figure out that situation where they need to get it down to free DP, because tomorrow is the deadline when you submit the roster for opening day. So, yeah, the Galaxy is going to have to solve this situation quick, or else there could be some penalty that they might face for having 4 DP, or they might be forced to buy down one of their DP, even though they didn't do anything to do it. And then in 4th place, I predict the Timbers is going to finish 4th, and I think the Timbers is probably going to do something similar to what DC did last year, because DC last year finished 4th, and remember how DC had that really long road kind of stretch in the beginning of the season because they were waiting for Audi Field to finish, and then they eventually kind of turned on in the second half of the season thanks to the Lucharu kind of connection. But for the Timbers, it's pretty much the same thing, although I don't think they really need to rely or get a famous superstar that is kind of in his 30s in order to basically make a run in the second half of the season, because this Timbers team definitely have a lot of talent. However, that 12-game road trip is absolutely brutal. I mean, and especially the fact that they are not planning to sign a DP kind of striker until the summer transfer window. I wonder how they're going to look once they get into June. I mean, if they are going to be right there near the playoffs position, then they could really, no doubt, to be a team that can compete in the top 3 and even maybe get top spot in the Western Conference, because they're probably just going to win out the rest of the home games, since the Timbers, they never lose at Providence Park. I don't even think they lost a game last season at Providence Park. It's been a long time since the Timbers have lost at home. But on the road, it's a whole different story. They just do not look good at all on the road. And if they do kind of find themselves at the bottom of the Western Conference by June, I'm guessing they're going to definitely get that star DP striker, and they're just going to do a DC United and able to find themselves finish in 4th place. Although that star DP player that they're signing, it's not going to be a European kind of star player. It's most likely going to be a guy that is playing in Europe, and he's playing with kind of a mid-table team, but he's scoring a lot of goals, or even a league that it's not big, but at the same time it's recognizable, like the Belgium league or the Eredivisie, where they're going to bring in a striker there, and then he of course will tear it up for them. So yeah, that might be something that the Timbers might do in the summer, but for sure I know for a fact that right now they are not planning to get a star DP striker, and they're just going to put Abovisi as their starting striker for the first half of the season, at least. That's what I think they're going to do. But in 3rd place, I am going to say it's the Seattle Sounders. And, I don't know if they're going to officially start their season until July, because, the Sounders, this is a team that it's just, it feels like if they go on another bad run, I don't think any Sounders fan will really kind of panic. Well, they would panic saying that, oh, the sky is falling and that we want Lagerwey out because of how things have gone, but they will somehow pick themselves up in the second half of the season, because that's what they are. Now, the Sounders did lose Ozzy Alonso, which is a huge loss, and a loss that is probably going to bring themselves one step back. But, you know, with Gustav Svensson and Christian Rodon as kind of what I call the new Sounders player, and maybe I will even put Leerdam as that kind of category, and Victor Rodriguez as kind of the new Sounders kind of player, as the players that is part of the new core of this team. Yeah, you know, this team is still very competitive, and this team still definitely have a lot of talent that no doubt they're going to be one of the best team in the league. And the other good news for the Sounders is that they're going to get Jordan Morris back, and hopefully he's going to stay injury-free for at least one season. Although that's really tough to ask because Morris haven't really played in a long time, and he's not going to be playing as a striker. He's going to be playing on the left wing. And the last time the Sounders tried to put Morris on the left wing, it did not work out very well. So we'll see how that is going to go. And also, I'm interested to see how many goals Ruidíaz is going to score. Ruidíaz really break out when he came into the league, and I think if it wasn't for Rootney and all the hypes around him, Ruidíaz would have got a lot of spotlight as a guy that comes in this league around the same time that Rootney came into this league and just completely tear up this league and put up some amazing numbers. But yeah, now into second place. I'm going to say it's going to be LAFC, and I might as well put first place too, and that of course is Sporting KC. And you know, these two teams is the two teams that I think can definitely easily finish at the top of the table. Maybe the Seattle Sounders might give LAFC or Sporting KC a fight, but I think when you look at Sporting KC and LAFC, they are kind of like in the Eastern Conference where the Red Bulls and Atlanta United basically are the alpha of the group. They're basically the team that separates the rest of the pack, and then from 3rd to 7th, that's when 5 teams out of the remaining 10 that is in that conference is going to fight it out for that position. And in some way, it's kind of similar here too with the Western Conference. I mean, LAFC, after what they did these last couple of weeks, finally getting reinforcement in the defense and in the midfield. Yeah, this team is definitely real, and this team is looking like an Atlanta team that were in the second year of their expansion year and could be a team that can easily maybe even win Supporters Shield this year. And that can set the same thing about Sporting KC. I mean, you know, we saw what happened tonight when they play against Toluca, how impressive they were. We saw it in the first leg too. This Sporting KC team is really deep. And I think alongside with the Red Bulls, this Sporting KC team is probably the deepest team in the league. It just feels like every position there's always a guy that is on the bench, and in case if that first option, of course, is not available, and if he gets injured or something like that, that second option will just come up and just perform. That is how deep and how good Sporting KC is. And it's full credit to Peter Vermees and the Sporting KC front office that has just, you know, when you look at the roster, it doesn't look very sexy. It isn't like an Atlanta United or the Red Bulls kind of roster. But when you look at the players, the starting 11 that of course plays for this team, yeah, they are the real deal. Even though you wouldn't think that they are a very sexy name and names that you mention a lot. Basically, what I think for Sporting KC, why they're so good is because they have good depth. The players that people might not think that could be the guy that is going to score a ton of goals and are big house name, those guys are going to prove people wrong, and they're going to perform very well. And thirdly, all of these guys have very strong chemistry bound. Everybody on this team understand each other, and that is why that this is a team that I think is going to be probably the team to beat. Although, like I said, LAFC is probably going to be their closest competitor in terms of that top spot. And yeah, there you go. That is pretty much it for the Western Conference. And like I said, I feel like the Western Conference this year is going to be it's going to be a very strong conference, and whoever comes out of the Western Conference will really give the Eastern Conference team a hell of a fight in the MLS Cup. I know that's kind of we're a little bit too early to talk about that, and maybe in case if Atlanta does go to MLS Cup again and they face against Sporting KC, I would still say maybe Atlanta has the advantage because of the roster, but I won't be surprised if a Western Conference team win MLS Cup this year, and I won't be surprised this will, I think, be the first time since the Seattle Sounders back in 2016 that a Western Conference team that have won MLS Cup. So, yeah, certainly there it is. There is the Western Conference prediction. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of it? Do you agree with the teams I put in the playoffs and the teams that I didn't put in the playoffs, or do you disagree with some of these teams where I put them? Let me know in the comments below, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.